Hi, I really don't like making videos like this, but sometimes you have to say what you have to say. And the word of this day is which cities. I repeat, which cities? Like Salem, Massachusetts, you think of a witch city. I'm going to talk on both sides of the argument from an indigenous Native American perspective. We had in our communities the occurrence of witchcraft, and we learned a long time ago that it was a toxic occurrence. These people become the host of a spiritual parasite. And in the European sense, we're going to talk about the word aura. So whether you're a monk or a priest or a shaman or a medicine person in your community, a Christian, a follower of Christ, if you are evolved in the spiritual hierarchy and you serve the Creator, you serve God, then we're going to talk about the word aura. What is your aura? Your aura is your spiritual protection. It's like a force field. Your armor, the armor of God. I think in Asiatic cultures it's called your chi. But let's just talk in the English language, we'll talk about the word aura. Your aura is your spiritual armor. A disembodied spirit or a demon is different. So in some teachings, it's thought that the spirit, when a person dies, when a human dies, the spirit separates into three parts. You have the physical body, you have the soul, which is immortal. You have the mental body, which is your mental consciousness, everything. Like, picture your mind being like a computer, and so your life experiences imprinted on your brain cells as like a computer program, the same way as a microchip stores information. You can consider your mental consciousness like the collective consciousness, all of the memories and experiences that you experienced in this lifetime held within your brain. So, and nervous system. So you have your soul, your mental body, your mental consciousness, and you have your etheric or emotional body, right? So the emotional energy that's within your body, that's acquired, that's also a form of consciousness. So you have, upon the moment of death in a human being or animal, some animals, I think you can argue animals have souls. Now, upon death, there's a separation. The bioelectromagnetic processes stop in the body and leave the body. The body is now an empty shell. You have the soul, which goes to heaven or hell, or if it's authorized by God for some divine reason and he decides to reincarnate a person, that's entirely up to God. That's between the person who died and God. If they had unfinished business and God wants to send them back to live again to complete their mission, that's entirely between a person and God when they meet God, when they die. What I'm going to talk about is when a person dies, the soul separates into three parts: the mental consciousness, the emotional consciousness, and the soul. The soul travels on. it either goes to heaven, hell, or ends up under the authority of God. If he authorizes reincarnation, can be reincarnated. The mental consciousness and the emotional consciousness of a person can become an imprint on the environment, like a ghost. Like you see like a ghost on the side of the road from a car accident. That could very well be the emotional energy left of the person. They died in an extreme state of shock, so their emotional energy is imprinted on the environment, and you can see that in the fog in the early morning, 3 a.m. It doesn't last forever. It eventually dissolves. But until it dissolves, it can become what's called a hungry ghost, where basically the mental consciousness and the emotional consciousness of the deceased is trying to sustain itself. And so the only way it can sustain itself is by finding a host, finding someone to attach to. In Asian cultures, I believe that they bring oranges to a funeral because they figure that the person's etheric body, their mental body, their emotional body, that hungry ghost will be feeding off of the energy of the fruit to try to sustain itself. They bring the fruit there instead of just bringing themselves, because if you are present, it may try to attach to you to feed off of your energy. Okay? A demon is completely different. A demon is a fallen angel. Angels were created at the beginning of the universe when God spoke them into existence. They were servants of God. And when God created man, he asked the angels to serve his new creation, which was man. And some of the angels refused. They would not be second place to man. And so they refused. I think in the story of Michael and the angels, God presented man to the angels, and he said, I have created a new creature. This creature has a soul, free will, and a physical body. The angels had an immortal soul and free will and perfect intelligence, but they didn't have a physical body to experience physical reality the same as we do. God gave us our physical body to experience physical reality. It was a gift. When God asked the angels to serve man, one spoke up. I think he said, "Non servum, I will not serve." This one who spoke up was Lucifer. Immediately, Michael, the archangel, said, "Who is like unto God? Who is to reject the commandment of God?" And that sparked the first war in heaven, and the third of the angels fell from heaven. Those became the demons. Demons are immortal. Angels are immortal. The punishment of demons is not until the end of time. It's when God decides their time is done. So until that happens, they're free to roam the universe, and they do. Just like you have a guardian angel, you're born, you're assigned a guardian angel, your guardian angel protects you. For example, you get in a car accident, time stands still, you don't get hurt. It's a miracle you didn't get hurt. You don't understand how you didn't get hurt. It's because your guardian angel stopped you from getting hurt. Let's go back to where I was talking about the word witch city. What happens is sometimes people grow up and things aren't very nice for them. Let's just say, for example, you got a student at a church, okay? And something happens tragic in their life. Their parents die, their friend dies, somebody in the church mistreats them. And what you have is a young person who is innocent, who is harmed. And sometimes those people don't understand why, if they were innocent, why they deserve to be hurt. And they blame God because they say, well, God, you know, you're supposed to protect me and you let this bad stuff happen to me, so you must not be who I think you are. And they doubt God. And that doubt in God leaves them into questioning their faith. And then they start to dabble in other religions and other spiritual practices. That there's a dime a dozen of spiritual practices other than Christianity on the planet, right? I mean, sometimes they're a person that they're going through a tragedy, they visit a psychic, or they have their tarot cards read. This is a gateway, a doorway. Sometimes they're interested in ancient history and they start reading about ancient history and paganism, and they're introduced to witchcraft. One way or another, they end up being introduced to witchcraft. Okay? These are the dabblers. On the other hand, there are people of particular bloodlines. Some say the Merovingian bloodline, where their family religion is demonology and witchcraft. Black magic. They exist. They exist all over the world. There are workers of light and workers of darkness. And some are these extremely wealthy, powerful families that have used black magic to stay in power for generations. And they teach this to their children. It's like a born witch, as we may say. A born witch is a woman who is taught black witchcraft from her mother, who was taught by her grandmother, and so on and so forth. Some may say that witchcraft started with the Nephilim. Basically, remember this in the Bible, it says that the sons of God fell in love with the daughters of men and begot children unto them. Under the terms of demonology, Azazel was the leading angel of 200 other angels that had children with 200 women on the earth and taught them the secrets of witchcraft, taught them everything there is to know about black magic. And the bloodlines of those 200 women are the bloodlines of the witches. These people are, not to say non-salvageable, but it's highly unlikely that they're going to give up their family craft of black magic, because they would end up giving up their power that they receive with such a craft. Very rarely, unless they're horrified by the reality of demonic possession, will they leave witchcraft and convert to Christianity and believe in God, or go through a cleansing, a spiritual rebirth where they renounce evil? I'm not saying that it hasn't happened. Maybe it has. Maybe there are people who have renounced their family heritage of black witchcraft and decided to serve God. That's the gift we have as human beings. We have the gift of being able to be forgiven, whereas the angels do not, because they have perfect intelligence. They can see the past, the present, the future. They can see everything that God has put in place. When they decide not to serve God, it's called the eternal sin, unforgivable sin. So the angels that rebelled in the first war in heaven and rebelled and renounced God and turned against God, their fate is sealed because they knew in their perfect intelligence that what they were doing could never be undone. And they chose it anyway. So they became, if you look at a spectrum of light and darkness, they went all the way to the left to the darkest, deepest pit of hell they could imagine. That's what they chose for themselves. Back to the word witch city. Witch city is what I'm trying to bring up. What happens is demons and disembodied spirits are like parasites. They need a human host or an animal host to survive. And not like a tick. I mean, if you think of a tick, right? A tick attaches to a deer, sucks out its blood, grows to be big enough to lay eggs, and then detaches from the deer and then lays its eggs and its life cycle goes on. Or a leech or a mosquito. Blood parasites, you could compare them a little bit to spiritual parasites, which are demons and disembodied spirits. But the problem is, with demons, they don't need human energy to sustain themselves. It helps them, but they have enough of their own energy where they don't really need a spiritual attachment to be empowered. They would rather just destroy a person to spite God. Disembodied spirits are basically like human and animal spirits that died in excruciating pain and suffering, and they're not at rest, and they don't want to dissolve or move on. They will attach to a human or animal and feed off of their spiritual energy. And that's why we're talking about the aura. Your aura is your spiritual armor, okay? This is why we're not supposed to sin. This is why in Native American traditions we're taught that we want to be able to face the Creator with clean hands and straight eyes. Not have spiritual weakness. Same thing in Christianity. You want to be able to come to God knowing that you're serving Him and you're not disrespecting Him by disobeying His commandments. You're coming to God with a clear conscience and a pure heart, because you know that God sees everything. So you can't lie to God. When you stand before God, you pray to God, you better be in the right, because He sees everything that you did, and you better say sorry for it if you know you did something wrong. Back to the witch city. What happens is, if you look at the state of the world right now, we have criminals, corrupt people who became the government. People who should have never been able to get into positions of authority, got into positions of authority with their own selfish gains instead of the interest of everyone else. Okay? it brings me back to the thought of when Jesus went into the temple and turned over the tables of the money changers. Why was he so angry with the money changers? Because they were trying to manipulate people. So basically, in ancient times, gold and silver were money, right? And then you had a group of people who designed a new currency called fiat, which was a deceptive currency, making coins out of tins and wood or whatever. And it has to go back to the banking system. And Jesus saw what they were doing, creating a deceptive currency system, and he was enraged. He said, my Father's house is a house of prayer, and he turned their tables over. And at that point, he really just, that's a whole nother discussion. I have to focus on the word which city. That's what we're talking about right now. What happens is these people who enjoy being evil because they enjoy the power that they get from their evil. They're so arrogant that they forget that upon their death they will be judged and they will be going to hell. Or they believe that through witchcraft they can somehow be immortal. Whatever their motivation is, they've decided to choose the path of evil and put themselves in a protected position where they can inflict harm upon others without being punished. So if you think about it, if you're a corrupt government employee and you're committing harm upon the innocent, because you're in a high position of government, there's nobody to punish you. So unfortunately for us, these evil people have gotten into those positions, and it's very difficult for us to remove them without an international uprising where the good of humanity overthrows the evil, which that will be a very costly battle. Not saying impossible, but very costly. What I'm trying to mention to you is, if you think about a witch city, right? How did it start? It started with one or two or a family of witches that moved in there and started to crawl up the social hierarchy. And when they did that, they started to increase the size of their coven to the point that they eventually run the whole town. They run the whole town, and it becomes a city, then they run the city. And you just have a city that's run by evil. A witch city. And I guarantee you that when you look at the people that are in those positions that run that witch city, they are, in fact, people who practice black witchcraft. And back in the ancient days, a witch was never allowed to survive when they were found out. If there was somebody practicing black witchcraft, which when it becomes apparent that they are in fact a satanic black witch, they are committing human sacrifice, because it is required by Lucifer. It is required by their demonic master. They're required to commit human sacrifice. And so when the people of the town or the city found that out, they went and they got rid of that person or that group. What happened now is those people were allowed at some point in history to survive, and they just spread like wildfire. And now what we have is a world that's completely corrupted by evil, where we have these evil secret societies that have put themselves in high positions of government, and now the world is suffering because of this. So what I'm trying to tell you, I guess, is the only way to combat this is to, one, be strong in your spiritual armor. Because when we go back to talking about an aura, we have to understand that the aura is your spiritual protection. Think of it as a force field, right? So if you are living a good life, making good karma, not sinning, not doing evil things, not hurting yourself, and you have clear and coherent thinking and perfect sobriety. So perfect sobriety is extremely important, because when you're sober and you're thinking clearly and you're in good health, it's very hard for you to be deceived. But what happens is, if you get drunk, if you get high, you become vulnerable to deception. And evil works off of trickery and deception and illusion. So the first step to defeating evil is to perfect yourself in your service of God. Go to God. Some people like to watch the sunrise, and they stare into the sun, and they fill their eyes with light, and they ask God to bless them and protect them and to guide them. Everyone's different. Some people pray to Jesus and they say, Jesus, would you please come into my heart and guide me, because I'm lost. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And they seek the voice of God. And that's the first step. And maybe that's all you have to do, is you have to humble yourself, and you have to truly tell God, listen, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm lost, and I need your help. And God will hear you. God will help you if you really deserve it. If you really care about what you're doing, He will answer your prayers. But what I'm trying to tell you is, compare a disembodied spirit or a demonic spirit to a blood parasite like a tick, a mosquito, or a leech, okay? If you're perfectly sober and you're swimming in a lake and a leech finds a way to get hooked onto your leg, if you're perfectly sober and clear and coherent in your thinking, you're going to rip that thing right off your leg, or use some salt and get it right off your leg right away, right? But let's just say you've been drinking and you're swimming in the lake and you're drunk, and all of a sudden the one leech attaches to you, then another and another and another. Before you know it, all of a sudden there might be a couple hundred leeches sucking all the blood out of your legs. And if somebody doesn't pull you out of that water and get those leeches off you, you're going to die. Well, that's how demons work. That's how disembodied spirits work. They attach to a person's spiritual weaknesses and their spiritual strength. They attach to their aura, and they start draining a person of their energy. Because what is you're a bioelectromagnetic being, okay? So your body, your nervous system, your brain operates off of bioelectromagnetic signals, right? And let me explain it, I guess, in the simplest way. If you took an egg, a chicken egg, and it was fertilized, okay? And there's a little tiny little baby chick growing inside of that. Let's just say it's 3 weeks into its incubation, right? There is an energy being generated, a spiritual energy inside of that egg that's operating all of those cellular processes that operate in the development. If that egg falls out of the nest and smashes onto the ground, okay, well, all of the water and all of the organic material in the egg is going to dry up, right? But where does the life of the animal go? Where does the life of that little chick go? Well, if it's electrical, a bioelectromagnetic charge, right? Then that it leaves that organic material. Okay? So imagine that your bioelectromagnetic charge, your spiritual energy, is within your physical body right now. And those, if you're drinking and you're drunk and you're depressed, or you're somehow not focused on God and not focused on yourself and your survival, and there's a weakness in you spiritually, those demonic entities and those disembodied spirits will attach to you like a leech, and they'll start to influence you. They'll start to make you more depressed, and so that you want to drink more, so that you become weaker, so that they can invite more of their kind, to the point that in some cases a person can become completely possessed, and under demonic possession they can commit acts of violence or kill themselves. And that's the end goal of the demon, is to get you to die not in a state of grace. They want you to die in a state of sin so that you go to hell. And that's their way of hurting God. That's the way the demons hurt God, is by killing the innocent, but not just killing the innocent, turning the innocent away from God. So, again, I didn't really want to make this video, but 3 words we'll talk about: witch cities, your aura, and your spiritual armor. That's the focus of this video. And sometimes I just say what's on my mind, and today's one of those days. I hope you have a good day, and may God bless you and protect you, and I hope you have a happy life.